Presentation of the Oklahoma News Report has been underwritten in part by AT&T Wireless Services, providing advanced cellular and paging services to businesses and individuals in Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and hundreds of other communities. Tonight on OETA at 7, live from Lincoln Center presents Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center 30th Anniversary Gala. Then at 9, Great Performances presents the production of ZZ Je T'aime, followed at 10 by Faith and Reason.
Next time on Mystery.
David Regan, you died on the 16th of June 2 years ago. Nothing's worked out for you since.
You cheat death and return to Earth. You're taking up space that doesn't belong to you.
Do you know her?
Julie Carney. She's an anesthetic registrar.
She wants to know if there's anything waiting for her if she dies again.
I've overdosed 3 people. They've got less than 3 hours before the digoxin kills them.
To the 30th anniversary celebration of a cherished cultural institution very often. To know the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center is to love them, and they have as much fun playing together as their audiences do listening to them. The music is of the absolutely highest quality. A commitment to new work is balanced by a love of old favorites, and they refuse to let themselves ever get stale or pigeonholed. Think they sound too good to be true? Just wait. Andre Watts, guest artist with the Chamber Music Society and an old friend to many of its musicians, is going to take over from here. And I'll see you at intermission.
Good evening. Good evening, and thank you for joining this musical celebration of the Chamber Music Society's 30th anniversary. If this is your first encounter with chamber music, congratulations, you're about to get a crash course in the literature. If, on the other hand, you're a regular, congratulations to you too. You're in for a very special and unusual treat. You're going to be taken on a chronological journey through this rich and varied chamber music repertoire. To tell you a little more about that, I'd like to introduce to you a good friend of mine who is not only an artist member of the Chamber Music Society, but also serves as its artistic director, David Schifrin. So, David, you're responsible for all this. Tell us a little bit about your plan.
Thanks, Andre. Tonight is certainly a milestone for the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. To celebrate 30 years of chamber music, 30 years of great repertoire, we've chosen some of the highlights of chamber music spanning 3 centuries of repertoire. We'll hear composers, a dozen composers, and to make it even more illuminating, we'll hear the music in the order in which it was composed. It's only a small sampling of the rich and varied repertoire that Andre was talking about, but it will show why we have such a loyal audience and why we have so many wonderful musicians as artist members.
Yes, and why people like me are so anxious to be invited as guests.
I'm so glad you're here tonight, Andre. You have been an inspiration since the earliest years of the Chamber Music Society.
No, you're very kind. Now that I got that free compliment out of you, thank you. That'll be all.
Enjoy.
We'll get the program underway. The Chamber Music Society's annual performances of the Bach-Brandenburg concertos are always sold-out occasions. In a moment, you'll hear why. This is spirited, virtuosic music, festive music for the string players. And in contrast to the orchestral arrangement, the original version that you're going to hear tonight has a kind of special excitement wherein each instrument has its own individual part to play, which makes chamber music of the highest order.
11 artists in this performance of the first movement of the third Brandenburg Concerto by Bach were Ida and Annie Kavafian and Mark Steinberg, violins, Paul Neubauer, Misha Amory, Sin Yun Huang, violas, Fred Sherry, Michael Cannon, and Yi-Sun Kim, cellos, Edgar Meyer, bass, and John Gibbons, harpsichord. Messrs. Steinberg, Amory, and Cannon are 3/4 of the Brentano String Quartet, and Sin Yun Huang and Yi-Sun Kim are the lower string half of the Borromeo String Quartet. And we'll hear both quartets later in our program, a panorama of the great literature of chamber music.
Now, we're going to hear two very different works by two of music's most prolific composers, Haydn and Mozart. Haydn's actually the first composer we have who wrote in just about every musical form that we know. Sonatas, concertos, symphonies, operas, oratorios, quartets, quintets, you name it. The piano trio that you're going to hear shows a very special aspect of his genius, this ability to write serious, innovative music and at the same time incorporate the kind of folk music that makes you sort of want to dance in the aisles. The Mozart Gram Partita, a really magical piece, is an enormous contrast. This piece was played at Mozart's own wedding. And when the playwright, Peter Schaffer of Amadeus fame, was searching for a musical piece that he could use to dramatize, you know, the moment where Salieri awakens to the real magnitude of Mozart's genius, that one special moment. This is the Mozart fragment that he used. It's heartbreaking music, beautiful melodic lines shifting from one wind instrument to another, intense romanticism in classical form.
The final movement, the Gypsy Rondo from Haydn's Trio in G major. Our artists, violinist Ida Kavafian, cellist Fred Sherry, and pianist Lee Luvisi. And now the stage is being prepared for the performance of the movement from Mozart's Wind Gran Partita, scored for winds with double bass. And our performers will be oboists Stephen Taylor and Randall Ellis, clarinetists David Schifrin and Joanne Sternberg, basset horn players Dennis Smiley and Aude Richard, bassoonists Milan Turkovic and Frank Morelli, horn players Robert Rausch and Gail Williams, and Edgar Meyer, bass.
In the next two works, we get to hear three string quartets. Now, the string quartet is, in a way, really the quintessential chamber music group. Any number of people have suggested that it's because these four string players represent humanity's voice: soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. The quartet you're going to hear, the Serioso of Beethoven, is a pivotal work in the history of music. Beethoven himself felt that he had pushed the boundaries of string quartet writing so far that he took an enormously long break before he continued to write string quartets. We are not going to take such a long break. We're going to have just enough time to play musical chairs here and get away from the Serioso seriousness and have some fun. We've taken to calling it here the Double Your Fun Quartet because you will hear two quartets playing the scherzo from Mendelssohn's Octet. Mendelssohn was still a teenager when he wrote this work, but already you hear the kind of mastery of a very particular sort of gossamer, will-o'-the-wisp, filigreed kind of writing that when we hear it in anyone else's music, we're always forced to refer to it as Mendelssohnian.
The Allegro con Brio from Beethoven's String Quartet in F minor, the Serioso String Quartet, played by the members of the Orion String Quartet, Daniel and Todd Phillips violins, Stephen Tenenbaum viola, and Timothy Eddy cello. And now we'll have the Scherzo from Mendelssohn's Octet, played by the combined Borromeo and Brentano string quartets. Nicholas Kitchen and Ruggero Ali Franchini violins in the Borromeo.
Okay, now I finally get to sit down at the piano and participate in some music. In the only piece on the... I didn't say it for that reason, honest. It will be nice. It's also the only piece on the program that features a vocalist, the spectacular Barbara Bonney. Schubert's Shepherd on the Rock really would be just another of his fabulous, wonderful, marvelous songs for voice and piano, except that he adds the voice of the clarinet. So you have vocal music joining instrumental music to create a whole new world of chamber music.
here's auf den Felsen, The Shepherd on the Rock, one of the miraculous songs of Franz Schubert, performed here live from Lincoln Center by soprano Barbara Bonney, clarinetist David Schifrin, and pianist Andre Watts. And did you notice that the blue in the collar of Miss Bonney's gown is an exact match to the blue of her eyes? The Shepherd on the Rock, one of the works Schubert composed in his last year, 1828. Just a few months later, he was dead at the age of 31. Here again, Barbara Bonney, David Schifrin, and Andre Watts. And what a wonderful conclusion that is to the first half of this 30th anniversary celebration of chamber music, the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. And in just a few moments, we'll go backstage. In the second half, we'll have a veritable kaleidoscope of music from the chamber music repertory, and I'll have more to say about that later. The Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center came into existence in 1965 at the urging of the then president of Lincoln Center, William Schumann. And now backstage, our host Beverly Sills is joined by Charles Wadsworth and David Schifrin. Let's join them.
There's an old saying that while failure is an orphan, success has 100 fathers. When it comes to the Chamber Music Society, everyone is a papa. But two of the proudest papas have to be the founding artistic director, Charles Wadsworth, and the current holder of that coveted title, David Schifrin. And they are here to share the credit. Charles helped bring it to life, and David will help steer it into the next century. Now, I think it's, first of all, Charlie and I were sitting here reminiscing, listening to the Shepherd because we did it too, you know. It was just a few years ago, but what the heck.
I mean, we did very well.
But I have to say up front that Charlie was my accompanist during my entire career. And you know what they say about a soprano? A soprano without an accompanist is like a day without sunshine. So you're very welcome. And, you know, I was the girl singer with the band here. I don't know. I was the first one. I got it a little by demand because Charlie was my accompanist, and I threatened to make his life miserable on the road if I didn't get to do all these concerts. So
you could have done that.
Yes, yes, I certainly could have. While you're catching your breath, and that was really a stunning performance. We were having a great time back here. I would like to ask you, Charlie, how did all this happen?
Well,
how did we get to this point?
Right. Well, first of all, it is great to be together back here where we've been so many times over the years. 33 years ago, William Schumann, the great composer and president at the time of Lincoln Center, decided that chamber music should have a place of importance at Lincoln Center, just as the New York City Opera, the Metropolitan Opera, and ballet, etc. So he asked me, thank goodness, to give him my ideas. My idea was to go around the world, collect the finest virtuosos that I could find all over the place, and put them together in a resident group. Then bring in great soloists such as yourself, such as Andre Watts played with us, Rudolf Serkin, Fischer Dieskau, you name them. Piatigorsky.
I carried his damn it.
He carried his cello. And it was an extraordinary experience, and we had at our disposal extraordinary repertoire. So that's the way it got started 30 years ago, and thank God you were with us during that time. 10 times from 69 to 79, we were out there on the stage together.
You counted.
Yep.
And I didn't think you cared.
No, I cared.
Charlie, what was your dream? I mean, has the Chamber Music Society reached the point that you thought it would reach at this point?
It's gone even further, I think, than I did. I never for a moment was pessimistic. I've always been optimistic about everything. For the first thing, we have the greatest bulk of music with the most enormous variety of any area of music. And I had been doing this thing in Spoleto, Italy with the Giancarlo Bonatti's festival, combining instruments with voice, brass, strings, clarinets, the whole business. We had a wealth of repertoire that had never been heard in the city. So my dream was to present to the New York audience, and now to the rest of the country, music they had never heard before, never had a chance to hear before. That was my dream. I had no idea. We did 14 concerts in 1969. We were doing 90 when I left in 89.
How many are you doing now?
Oh, well, between Alice Tully Hall and concerts on tour, I think there are a couple of hundred events a year, and at least 100 formal concerts, about 40 in Alice Tully Hall alone.
David, what's your dream now for the society? Where do you want to take it?
Well, the model is so wonderful and so secure. I think where we can take it in the next century is to continue the great tradition of the Chamber Music Society, keep playing the great repertoire, and expand that repertoire, commission new works, discover new works. Maybe in an attic somewhere in Prague is another work of Dvorak that we've never heard. You never know what's in the future. There is, as Charles said, there's so much great music. I felt like a kid in a candy store when I got this job. So many chances to find things and play concerts. And
I remember that Charlie used to stand on the stage, talk to the audience, you know, break down barriers. Sometimes people are a little intimidated by the words chamber music. And now I notice tonight Andre is doing the same thing. I think it's a stunning idea.
It's very healthy, I think, because there should be no barrier between us and the people that we love to give music to.
It's true. Would you just say a little something about Alice Tully? This is Alice Tully Hall.
Well, when Bill Schumann had the dream that we would have a constituent for chamber music, he also approached the great, distinguished, wonderful woman, Alice Tully, a great philanthropist. She loved music, chamber music, voice. She knew everything about opera and everything else. Great food, wine, and she gave the money to build the glorious hall that you folks out there in television land have been hearing. You ought to come here and be inside the joint. It's really an extraordinary place.
It is, and of course it's known for having this extraordinary sound. I used to love to sing here. And, you know, I come in here, there's a smile on my face. I mean, I just am ecstatic.
Yeah.
Great, warm, fabulous memories. And, you know, when I think 30 years, I remember, Charlie, when we first started to do this, I can't believe that this is the 30th year. But I thank you for joining me. I congratulate you both on the 30. You certainly look younger than 30, but I congratulate you both on the 30th anniversary.
Thanks.
Wish you many, many more. And
thanks for everything you did for us here at the Chamber Music Society.
And speaking of commissions, which I'm going to do right now, if the words starving and artist often go together, as you can see in my case, they never did. Tell me what's wrong with this line written by a composer we all know well. Quote, "Rest assured that you are dealing with a true artist who likes to be well paid for his work." Unquote. The brilliant man who got it right was Beethoven, who apparently didn't hold with the starving artist notion. Good for him. This is not meant to shock you, but many other true artists, some of them featured on tonight's program, would agree with Beethoven. In fact, they face this scandalous issue every time they write music. Do they do it for love or money, or for love and money?
Oscar Wilde used to say that when bankers get together, they talk about art. When artists get together, they talk about money.
A great composer will write symphonies, operas, chamber music, basically everything. But nobody writes chamber music because it's a living. Nobody writes chamber music because that's where they want to make the big bucks. I'm a composer, and I write a lot, and I get paid. And it's a tough way to make a living being a composer.
In the Renaissance, it was pretty well understood that composers had patrons. Either you worked for the church or you worked for a wealthy aristocrat.
Well, Herr Mozart, a good effort. Oh, well, decidedly that. An excellent effort. So, then you liked it,
And even though you could have your own taste, it had better be the same as the taste of your patrons, otherwise you weren't going to get anything.
Your work is ingenious. It's quality work. And there are simply too many notes. That's all. Just cut a few, and it'll be perfect.
Legend has it that Mozart was the first composer to really be a freelance composer. he did not really get a job and stick to it working for the aristocracy.
Mozart was running subscription concerts and started out by making about 1,000 florins a year, and then 2 or 3 in his best years, and maybe even in the last year of his life with Requiem, Magic Flute, and other things, might have taken 4,000 or 5,000 florins home, making him, at least in terms of salary, a pretty wealthy man.
It seems like Mozart made a lot of money, but it left his pocket as soon as he got it. So when he got a lot of money, he thought, I better buy things. I better have things. And he was not very good at this. Once the system that Mozart tried to buck, the aristocracy supporting the artist, once that fell apart, which happened in Beethoven's lifetime, it's been very difficult for composers ever since.
I mean, today, what do? You either get a commission, you win a prize, you get a grant.
The only way to make a living as a composer, and make a really good living, without doing anything else, is probably to write either for television or film. But the problem with that is it's not deeply musically satisfying.
Mrs. Stravinsky once said, in a way intended to insult film composers, by the way, that the only purpose of film music is to feed the composer. I can think of worse purposes, you know, without any problem.
Hey, Eddie, I think we're being tailed. Yeah, we better give them a slip.
It's fun. It's exciting, and you work with interesting people, and the product is usually very exciting.
There is not all that much music called uncommercial. If all you have to be is unpaid, then there are more geniuses running around than we know about. Modern times, well, I was hired to do that because Charlie Chaplin was an amateur of music, but he could not write music down. Nevertheless, he did have musical ideas, and he always had somebody working with him. And the function of such a person was to take Charlie's tunes, then make something of them. For instance, if you're doing a sequence such as in Modern Times, the stuff in the factory, and that starts out with 3 notes, repeated. Bum, 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 bum. How do you get 8 minutes out of that? What you do is you compose. It isn't true that anybody can write a film score, but almost anybody can do it. The problem is to try to write a little music somewhere in it.
The most money you can get has no correlation with artistic satisfaction at all.
Hold the pickle, hold the lettuce, special orders don't upset us.
You can make a lot of money from television commercials because, first of all, you only need to write 30 seconds. Usually it's music which is recycled a few times. That's pretty easy to do, and you get paid quite a lot.
I took a little bit of money, and then I bought a bit of honey.
But when it comes to the artistic satisfaction, that's not where it is.
Long, long way.
I would say that the relationship between money and composing is completely inverse to its artistic work.
Wouldn't you like to be a pepper too?
The very same composer who will be paid a lot for a movie score or for a television commercial, and less probably, but a lot for an opera. And as you go down to orchestral music or concertos, you're making a little bit less with the same composer. By the time you get to chamber music, you get paid the very least, and it's the most important thing you do.
Almost all of the great composers always worked for money. But actually, the money is an excuse. I used to say that the mere suggestion that somebody would be willing to put up with my music engenders music, and I'm sure it happens with everybody. You don't go in it to be different. You go in it to be yourself. And if you're lucky, you're in touch with that. And if you're even luckier, it's worth something.
When we at the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center commission a work, it can range anywhere from a few $1,000s for a short work to $1,000 a minute for a 20-minute work.
Clearly, the ways to get rich are not through chamber music.
When you compose a chamber piece, because there's one person on a part, what you can write for that person is far more revealing and more complicated, and you can write more difficult music for a violinist who's playing alone than a violinist who's playing with 18 other violinists.
Another great motivator for a composer to write a chamber work is a higher assurance of an excellent performance. You don't have the variables of 100 musicians, you have the variable of 4. And you have much more communication with each performer.
Composers love to write chamber music because they know that the players will not go in public until the work is fully rehearsed in their fingers, in their heart, and they will also play the piece, hopefully embrace it into their repertory.
When you listen to chamber music, it is practically like you're in the room of the composer. There's nothing in your way. No costumes, no directors, no special lighting. It is really about the ideas of the music. It is as pure as it can get. Chamber music is the thing that you care about the most, where there's the most pressure as a composer, because you're living in the most profound and most challenging tradition of the greatest works of the greatest composers with the finest performers and the most discriminating audience, and you get paid the least. So you have to love it.
Live from Lincoln Center is made possible by a major grant from MetLife, the company that helps you make sense of it all, and on behalf of MetLife's affiliate, New England Financial. This program is also made possible by grants from the Robert Wood Johnson Jr. Charitable Trust, Thomas H. Lee and Ann Tenenbaum, the Irene Diamond Fund, the Lou Esther T. Mertz Charitable Trust, the Fan Fox and Leslie R. Samuels Foundation, and the National Endowment for the Arts.
You're watching PBS.
Next time on Mystery.
If you cheat death and return to Earth, you're taking up space that doesn't belong to you.
He wants to know if there's anything waiting for her if she dies again.
I've overdosed 3 people. They've got less than 3 hours before the digoxin kills them.
Touching evil.
Thursday evening at 9 on OETA.
We have an interesting mix of movies planned Saturday night in the OETA Movie Club. First up at 9, a blind girl falls in love with a young black man in this 1965 drama with sensitive racial undertones, starring Sidney Poitier. Shelley Winters gives an Oscar-winning performance in A Patch of Blue. Then a murder mystery with twists and turns and guest stars and great disguises. The list of Adrian Messenger will keep you guessing until the very end. Join us Saturday night at 9 on the OETA Movie Club.
The best in drama on Masterpiece Theater, Sunday night at 8 on OETA.
This is live from Lincoln Center, coming to you from the stage of Alice Tully Hall at Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts in New York City. And we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of Lincoln Center's Chamber Music Society.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, we have a lot of music, so I'm going to start while some of you get your seats. You know, it is easy to think of chamber music as scaled-down music, fewer players, much more intimate settings than opera or symphonies. Actually, well, Brahms shows us that chamber music can be passionate and aggressive and massive. The final movement of his G minor piano quartet is as passionate and gigantic and has the same large ideas and intensity as any of his symphonies. They're not going to come back. Less than 2 decades after this music, after Brahms' death, we have the Debussy Sonata for flute, viola, and harp. Debussy was planning a series of works for unusual combinations of instruments, you know, exploring color and sound, always searching for new sounds, unusual sounds. And you'll hear some fairly unusual sounds from the viola if you pay attention. Ravel, at the same time, was also seeking new influences for his music. Jazz and the blues were a great source of inspiration to him. In the sonata for violin and piano, which you will hear immediately after the Debussy, you'll see just how smitten Ravel was with this earthy American music.
The finale from Debussy Sonata for flute, viola, and harp, played by Ransom Wilson, flute, Heidi Lewalder, harp, and Paul Neubauer, viola. And our quartet in the finale of the Brahms G minor piano quartet that preceded, Cho Young Lin, violin, Paul Neubauer, viola, Gary Hoffman, cello, and David Golub, piano. And now, in a few moments, Cho Young Lin and Anne-Marie McDermott in the blues movement from Ravel's Sonata for violin and piano. the Blues Movement, Mark Moderato, from the Sonata for Violin and Piano by Maurice Ravel, performed by violinist Cho Young Lin and pianist Anne-Marie McDermott, and it came to you live from Lincoln Center, from the stage of Alice Tully Hall. This concert marking the 30th anniversary celebration of the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. Next, we'll have all four members of the Orion String Quartet in a movement from a Bartók quartet. But I'll leave that information for Andre Watts.
Bartók, Shostakovich. No one topped Bartók when it came to exploring other musical forms. I mean, this man wandered in the countryside in Romania and Transylvania and Hungary, collecting folk themes. And then with these as inspiration, he basically redefined the string quartet, much as Beethoven had done a century earlier. There's a completely different kind of folk music in the Shostakovich trio, klezmer music. This trio was dedicated to the memory of a friend of Shostakovich's who died in a concentration camp. You'll hear that special klezmer combination of mourning and rejoicing, the sort of dancing and wailing with grief at the same time. Both the Bartók and Shostakovich movements are extremely personal works of incredible intensity.
The Allegro Molto movement from Bartók's Fourth String Quartet, played by the Orion String Quartet. The brothers Daniel and Todd Phillips, violins, Stephen Tenenbaum, viola, Timothy Eddy, cello. And next, we'll have the Allegretto from the trio in E minor by Shostakovich. Ani Kavafian, violin, Gary Hoffman, cello, and Andre Watts, piano. the Allegretto movement from the Trio in E minor by Shostakovich. Live from Lincoln Center, our artists were violinist Ani Kavafian, cellist Gary Hoffman, and pianist Andre Watts.
Well, our 30th anniversary celebration began with Bach and ends with the Shaker Hymn, the final section of Copland's Appalachian Spring. And it feels like the right kind of bookend for Bach, remembering, of course, that nothing ended with Copland. This music that he wrote for Martha Graham's ballet, old music that points the way to the future, makes us think about the past and the present. 30 years of continuity represents extraordinary consistency. The Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center today is quite different from the group that began 3 decades ago. And yet, it is exactly what it has been from the start. A flexible ensemble of great musicians recreating great compositions.
The concluding sections of Aaron Copland's Appalachian Spring in its original version for chamber ensemble. Our artists were Ransom Wilson, flute, David Schifrin, clarinet, Milan Turkovic, bassoon, Ani Kavafian, Mark Steinberg, Nicholas Kitchen, and Ruggiero Alifranchini, violins, Paul Neubauer and Sin Yun Huang, violas, Fred Sherry and Yesun Kim, cellos, Edgar Meyer, bass, and Anne-Marie McDermott, piano. And led on by Fred Sherry, here our artists return to the front of the stage here at Alice Tully Hall in New York City's Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. In the house program, David Schifrin has written that we play Appalachian Spring in its original version. It makes for a quiet ending to our festive concert, not a bang of celebration so much as a thoughtful look toward the future.
I'm Beverly Sills. Thank you for joining us for this live from Lincoln Center telecast. Be sure to join us for our next program, the New York Philharmonic's New Year's Eve Gala. Check your local PBS stations for information. I'll see you there.
And as you can see, all the artists who participated this evening are on stage. Center stage right now, Barbara Bonney. The Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center mounted its first concert in September 1969 in this, its permanent home, Alice Tully Hall. The pioneering structure, a corps of distinguished artist members augmented by invited guests, allows artistic director David Schifrin to present concerts of every instrumentation, style, and historical period here at Lincoln Center and on national and international tours. And of course, on television, as has been the case this evening by way of Live from Lincoln Center. As the nation's premier repertory company for chamber music, the Chamber Music Society strives to bring audiences the finest performances of an extraordinary body of repertoire, dating as far back as the Renaissance and continuing through the centuries to the finest works of our time. In addition to its concert series, the Chamber Music Society offers a wide spectrum of additional programs, including a family concert series called Meet the Music, a professional development program for outstanding emerging artists titled Chamber Music Society 2, and a series of hour-long concerts in its intimate Rose studio. This has been another in our continuing series of Live from Lincoln Center. This is Martin Buxban. Good evening.